George Carver was born into slavery in the South near the end of the Civil War. Born in Diamond, Missouri around 1864. A week after his birth, he, along with his mother and sister, were kidnapped and taken to Kentucky and sold. Only George was returned to the Carvers, who owned him. After the war, at the end of slavery, he and his brother were adopted by the Carvers. As a young boy, he was nicknamed the Plant Doctor because he would help restore the neighbors' plants and crops. Today, he would be known as having a green thumb. His adoptive mother taught him to read and write, but George wanted an education that went far beyond what she could provide. The nearest school was 10 miles away, and George needed to pursue his passion for learning, so he left home to follow his dream. It was extremely difficult for a black youth with no family to get an education. George traveled from town to town doing odd jobs to make money, so he had a place to stay while he went to school. After graduating high school, George applied and was accepted to Highland College in Kansas. But when they found out he was colored, they refused him admission. Not letting setbacks like this deter him, he pursued his love of art and music by enrolling in Simpson College in Iowa in 1890. A teacher saw his potential and love for the sciences and encouraged Carver to apply to Iowa State Agricultural College, where he was the first black student to attend in 1891. He was so successful here that his professors encouraged him to continue in his education and become part of the faculty as he enrolled to receive his master's degree in plant pathology, which he received in 1896. While he was teaching at Iowa Agricultural College, he became very famous in his field. At this time, he was invited by Booker T. Washington to come back to the South, the Deep South in Alabama, to become head of the agricultural department at Tuskegee Normal and Industrial School for Black Americans. Wanting to help the struggling African Americans in the South, he accepted the invitation. When he arrived in Alabama, he was reminded of the devastation of the South during the Civil War, and he saw that the soil was completely depleted from 300 years of growing only cotton. Nothing would grow in the fields except weeds. He asked a child nearby what kind of plant it was, to which the child said, "It's a weed, mister. That's all that grows around here." Shortly after arriving at Tuskegee, and realizing there was no money to build a lab or purchase materials, he grabbed 13 of his students and went to the dump. They grabbed old pieces of metal and tin, old bottles and tin cans, even broken pieces of glass were repurposed to make beakers. His students learned that using ingenuity can overcome the lack of money as their makeshift lab was taking shape. Quickly, Carver was making an impact in the poverty-stricken South. After studying the weeds in the Alabama soil, George discovered that plants like peanuts, sweet potatoes, and soybeans would not only grow in the depleted soil, but they would replenish the nitrogen and other nutrients back into the soil. Introducing crop rotation reinvigorated the crop production in the South and saved the Southern economy. Farmers were producing crops of peanuts, but at that time, peanuts were only an occasional snack. There was not a market for them as a cash crop, so the farmers growing them would lose money if they couldn't find a greater use for them. Booker T. Washington, the dean of the Tuskegee School of Agriculture, came to Carver and asked him what he was going to do. If the black farmers and the peanut crop failed, it would increase racial tension in the South. In his book, The Lost Choice, author Andy Andrews shares a story about George Washington Carver responding to Booker T. Washington's concern. He writes, George Washington Carver was not worried. He turned to face his obviously worried mentor and said, "All my life, I've risen regularly at 4 in the morning to go into the woods and talk with God. That's where he reveals his secrets to me. When everybody else is asleep, I hear God best and learn my plan. This morning I asked him why he made the peanut. In the forest, Carver prayed, "Dear Mr. Creator, please tell me what the universe was made for." The great Creator answered, "You want to know too much for that little mind of yours. Ask for something more your size." Then I asked, "Dear Mr. Creator, tell me what man was made for." Again, the great Creator replied, "Little man, you are still asking too much. Cut down the extent of your request and improve the intent." So then I asked, "Please, Mr. Creator, will you tell me why the peanut was made?" He told me, "Separate the peanut into water, fats, oils, gums, resins, sugars, starches, and amino acids. Then recombine these under my 3 laws of compatibility, temperature, and pressure. Then the Lord said, you will know why I made the peanut." Booker T. Washington laughed nervously, obviously skeptical at Carver's suggestion. Finally, with much anxiety, he asked the humble scientist if God always gave him the right answers. With a broad smile, Carver replied, "Let me put it this way. The Lord always provides me with life-changing ideas. Not that I'm special. The Lord provides everyone with life-changing ideas. These ideas are quite literally a treasure from the Almighty. It is up to each of us, however, to choose and dig for the treasure." Within 10 days, George Washington Carver had discovered more than 300 uses for the peanut. One trip to that special place in the woods to talk with God not only enhanced race relationships at the time, but also fundamentally changed the agricultural industry as we know it today, all because he listened to and felt the Spirit of God in his life. Carver returned to the lab once more to help his apprentices. He emerged in 1916 with his How to Grow the Peanut and 105 Ways of Preparing It for Human Consumption. Some of Carver's 300 uses for the simple nut include ink, coffee, axle grease, bleach, shaving cream, rubber, and wood stain. Needless to say, farmers quickly found a use for all those peanuts. The cotton oil mills across the South were easily converted to peanut oil mills. Farmers also began feeding their livestock the plants of the nut and feeding their families with the product they couldn't sell. With his hundreds of discoveries, Carver furthered the movement toward the complete self-sufficiency for Southern farmers. Peanuts continued to grow as a Southern crop throughout the 20th century. By 1920, the United Peanut Association of America was formed, creating a union for peanut farmers. And by 1940, peanuts were among the top 6 crops in the country. At the turn of the century, the rural Southern farm was on the verge of extinction. With passion and tenacity, Carver introduced a solution and not only returned the enterprise to its former glory, but instituted a tradition that would form the livelihood of generations to come. In truth, George Washington Carver and the Little Peanut saved the South. George Washington Carver was not going to let race interfere with his higher calling and purpose. In his own words, "We are brothers, all of us, no matter what race or color or condition, children of the same Heavenly Father. We rise together or we fall together." And of his fellow African Americans he said, "I am trying to get our people to see that their color does not hold them back as much as they think." And to prove that his race wasn't in his way, George Washington Carver was called upon by Henry Ford during World War I. Carver was asked to assist Henry Ford in producing a peanut-based replacement for rubber. Also during the war, when dyes from Europe became difficult to obtain, he helped the American textile industry by developing more than 30 colors of dye from Alabama soils.
He also went to India to talk with Mahatma Gandhi to discuss the agricultural opportunities for India. George Washington Carver was also called upon to give advice to Teddy Roosevelt, U.S. President, regarding agricultural development in the United States. He testified before Congress in 1921 and was acknowledged by Franklin D. Roosevelt, all well before the Civil Rights Movement. George Washington Carver was truly an amazing man. And in 1916, he was made a member of the British Royal Society of the Arts, which is a rare honor for any American. So what makes a man like this tick? Here's some quotes from this amazing and inspiring man. Nothing is so damaging as ignorance. I don't know, you say. What reason is there for you not knowing? You have not looked, you have not searched. Study to be approved of the great Creator. Be master of things. He also said to me, my dear young friends, nature in its varied forms are the little windows through which God permits me to commune with Him and to see much of His glory, majesty, and power by simply lifting the curtain and looking in. Carver's approach to science was much the same. God is going to reveal to us things He never revealed before if we put our hands in His. No books ever go into my laboratory. The thing I'm going to do and the ways of doing it are revealed to me. Another time he said, one of the things that has helped me as much as any other is not how long I'm going to live, but how much I can do while living. Here are a few quotes that is an epitome of his life. The primary idea in all of my work was to help the farmer and fill the poor man's empty dinner pail. My idea was to help the man furthest down. This is why I have made every process just as simple as I could to put it within his reach. Again, he said, selfishness and the self are at the bottom of a lot of troubles in the world. So many people fail to realize that serving God and one's fellow men are the only worthwhile things in life. It is service that counts. And he truly backed this up with a life of service. He served others, and we are indebted to him for it.